everyone. Welcome to the Fuel the Fight podcast. I am your host, Lieutenant Colonel Nick Behringer. Another great episode today. We've got all the way from New Jersey joining us, the one, the only, the legendary Jim Miller. And before I jump to Jim, I had to write down so many of his records. I mean, it's like it's a list here. So he is currently a UFC fighter. For the lightweight division, he holds the record for most fights, most wins, most finishes, most submissions, total fight time in the Octagon. And then I think one of the records that's probably doesn't get highlighted that he's not on is decision wins. He's not even in the top 10 in decision wins, so that should tell you how this guy fights. Jim Miller, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, buddy.
Yeah, I had to look that up. Did you know you're not even in the top 10 for decision wins?
I didn't know that one. That's pretty. Yeah, it's kind of telling, I think, for the way that I fight. So I like that one.
Yeah. I saw that. In the fact that you've over 6 hours in the Octagon, right? And you would think that you would accumulate a lot of decision wins, but that's not the case. So, with that saying, I do want to highlight for people who might not, know you or have watched your fights. Has that fighting style that you kind of push forward and don't go for the decision win, have you always been wired that way, or is that a conscious choice, or what brought that about?
Yeah, it's kind of always wired like that. When I was growing up as a wrestler, the only time I'd really ever get like mad about a wrestling match was if I should have pinned the guy and I didn't. Like I got mad if I tech fault somebody, right? Like, because that means I turned to their back a few times. I had them in deep spots that I should pin them. And like I was so like performance driven, right? It was never about necessarily the outcome. Like I probably wrestled a couple hundred matches over my lifetime. And like some of the matches that I'm most proud of are losses, but like I went out there and I pushed as hard as I could, and I made guys that should have beat the crap out of me like crawl off the mat because they were so tired. So that was kind of always just the goal, right? Is to go out and to perform well, because I always knew that like a wrestling match as a as a kid, it's not the end all be all. Like there's going to be more beyond that. And, obviously now as a 40-year-old man, I understand it a little bit better in that, like, yeah, all these things are just experiences that you can then draw off of when you're in situations later in life. So that was always driving me. And I'm sure that I've lost, I know that I've lost definitely a few fights that I probably should have won, or I easily could have won had I fought a little more conservatively, fought a little bit more to win points. But yeah, like I'm not going to be happy. I'm not going to be happy about that. I know what gets me excited, and that's to go out and to dominate and to put somebody away.
Yeah, well, and then that's also, I'm sure you probably have had coaches give you a little bit of hard time, but I mean that's what the fans love about you, right? Is the fact that you're not a point fighter, that you're going out there to finish fights. But I imagine as a prize fighter, has your coaches ever given you a hard time? Because I mean there's a lot of money on the line, win or loss, right? And so have you ever felt that pressure, or do they know, hey, this is Jim Miller, this is the way he fights?
Yeah. It's what I do, and it's how I fight. And like I said, leading up to that last fight, some people were kind of giving me some criticism for taking a fight in January when I had already kind of solidified my opportunity to fight at UFC 300. But I go out, I fight aggressively. I know what I'm doing, and there was no hesitation for me. And honestly, the people that were giving me some crap probably have never fought before. So if that tells you anything about it. So, it's I'm going to do what I do. And fortunately now, like at this point in my career, right? Like we're definitely on the tail end. That's obvious. I don't know exactly how much longer I've got. I'm hoping another, 2 years or something like that. Right. I want to have some performances that I'm really happy about and fight some fighters that I really have wanted to fight. But like now it's like, I got to go out the way that I came in. Like I got to go out being that aggressive guy and being that reckless fighter, because we got to finish his career the same way that I built the legacy, throughout the beginnings of it.
No, I appreciate that. And, speaking of which, and we're going to talk nutrition, but your upcoming fight, because I got some stats there. I mean, you're fighting Bobby Green, who's,
Yep.
A veteran like yourself. And then he is number one for strikes landed in the lightweight division, significant strikes and total strikes. I think you're at number 3 for total strikes, right behind him. So, I mean, this matchup, how does that feel? I mean, this is an exciting fight, no?
This is an exciting one. He's an interesting. He's got an interesting style, right? There's really nobody that fights like he does. And this is a fight that we've tried to make on a few occasions in the past, and unfortunately 3 times it's fallen apart. Always within like 2 weeks. So I'm hoping that the 4th time is a charm and that we get to share the Octagon together and put on a show.
Yeah, no, it should be a great fight. But to your nutrition, because that's what we like to talk about on the field of fight. You're somebody who prides himself on kind of growing your own food, kind of getting your food from the farm as much as possible. When did that start, and then how did that kind of come about?
I'd always wanted, like growing up, I'd always wanted to be the be the guy living in a cabin out in the middle of Alaska, right? So life takes you different ways than you think it's going to take you. So here I am, still in New Jersey, unfortunately. But like I've always romanticized that idea of like homesteading and just kind of providing as much as you can for yourself and your family. And when I was diagnosed with Lyme disease in 2016, that's when really like the major shift had to happen. Lyme is an inflammatory disease. So like if I eat stuff that causes inflammation, I feel it pretty quickly. So I try to stay away from all the processed stuff, and it's not that I ate like garbage before that. It's just there's been a more of a concerted effort between me and my wife to really try to cook from whole foods and to put that effort in. And we have 4 kids, and we want them to have solid nutrition and grow and develop to their potential. And I do have a picky eater. My little guy is definitely he's the one that is picky. We get him to try stuff, and but he's coming around. But he's definitely the pickiest. Like my kids eat really well, and that makes me happy, and it makes me willing to put in the effort to, like, just the other day, I got some beef, right? So we made some steaks. I made some roasted potatoes and some broccoli, and like the parboiling potatoes and then roasted them for an hour, and it ends up taking you like 2 hours to make these damn potatoes. And is it worth it? To me, it is. Like to some people, it might not be worth it. They'd rather just get a sack of French fries and do it like that. But to me, it was worth it to spend the time to spend the effort, to put a meal on the table that I was proud of to give my kids and my wife. And I come from that Italian family, right? Like, you come to the house, we feed you. That's kind of the thing, and that's how like I show people that I care about them. Like, my favorite thing is to make stuff for people and share it with them and cook for them. So it can be a pain in the butt. It can be tiring to come back from a day of training, have 2 sessions, and be beat up, and then get into the kitchen and start whipping something up for dinner and doing all that stuff. So there's definitely a balance of trying to figure that out, especially now that the kids are in a lot of their activities and stuff. So but yeah, like I just I enjoy it because I enjoy feeding people and myself.
Well, and you said, hey, we just got some beef. And now I know the story. I mean, you got what, half a cow? You didn't go to the grocery store, right? This was a cattle your neighbor had that you identified. Mm-hmm. You're like, hey, I want half a cow, and then you process that meat yourself.
So yeah, my old neighbor, we moved away a couple of years ago, but he raises beef cows and pigs and stuff. So I get a pig from him every year. And his beef is very good. It's not, ultra premium, Wagyu type stuff, but, and this is definitely an old cow. But it's good. Like it tastes delicious. And I do try to eat as local as possible. I think that, that's I feel like this is kind of the responsible thing to do. And obviously I love coffee. So, there's nowhere that the coffee grows near New Jersey. So there's obviously things that I will make concessions on. But yeah, if I can get like my protein as local as possible, either through me hunting it or, a pig or a cow from him, I'm going to be happy about it. And it's everybody's been to the grocery store. It's 2024. Like I got that beef for a lot less than I get it at the grocery store. It took a little more work. My neighbor's uncle, he was a butcher, so he processed it up for us. I was able to select cuts. But my kids and I, we wrapped it and packed it away in the freezer, and which was it's fun to do with them and get them a little bit involved in the process. But yeah, so it's I don't know. Like I said, I think it's kind of a responsible thing to do to try to eat as local as possible because we talk about all the climate change and this and that, right? And there are differing views on everything. And some people with the Chicken Little, the sky is falling type stuff, and I'm not quite like that, but I do believe that I should not sustain myself on something that needs to be shipped across the country, like every day. So that's why I try to grow as much food in the garden as I can and harvest as much as I can locally here.
And did you always start, because I know, you make your own sausages. I mean, you're all your protein and stuff, you're processing most of the time, right, yourself. Did that start at a young age, or is that kind of you're an adult, you started like thinking about things, you're like, all right, I want all this local, or did you learn this at a young age? Like, where did that come from?
It happened later in life, I didn't grow up like hunting because my father, he was working 6 days a week. And then when he wasn't at work, he was coaching us in football or wrestling or baseball. So he was always tied up. So my brothers and I got our hunting licenses, did our hunter's education course when my oldest brother got his driver's license. So once that kind of happened, like, then we started actually getting to hunt. Like, we grew up hearing all the stories because my father and grandfather, they ran pointers hunting upland, and then they also ran some beagles after rabbits, and we just heard all the cool stories about them doing this type of stuff and living this way, and we wanted to do it. My brothers and I were so enthralled by it that that's what we wanted to live our lives like. So, it's funny because I think about the times that I had venison when I was a kid, and I didn't like it at all. And I'm trying to like figure out like why that is. I definitely know that my palate has changed as I matured. But honestly, I think that like having a phone, right, and social media and the ability to access all the world's information, I've learned a lot by seeing what other people do for like field care and stuff like that. And like, I mean, once I learned this stuff, and then you like have a really good venison steak, and it's like, wow, like this is amazing. So yeah, it just kind of drives it home. But yeah, it's definitely been later in life. I fight in a cage for a living. I do that a couple times a year. Training is, I'm a quality over quantity kind of guy. I'm not, just hitting the bag for, 17 hours a day. So I do have time. I've got time to do stuff, which I feel like I should maximize how much I can get done in that time. And that's why I try to do the things that I do.
Yeah, I mean, you're obviously very serious about nutrition. I think you're the only. I mean, is there another UFC fighter who has a cookbook?
Chad Mendez has one.
Okay.
He's not in the UFC anymore, but yeah, he's got a cookbook. Chad is I've eaten what he's made, and that dude can cook. Like, he can really, really cook. He's pretty awesome. I think there are definitely things that I do, the level of crazy that I take it. I think I do take it a step further than some of my other peers, right? Like, how many professional athletes are making bear grease, so like they have, animal-based oils to use in cooking. Like, not very many. So I know that I'm not normal when it comes to all this stuff.
So I'm interested in this because I have 3 kids, and I find if I can get them involved in the process, like they're more willing to try it. Like, what do you have any tips or tricks getting your kids to try these different foods? Like, how did you get your kids to eat bear? Like, how did that proposition go?
Honestly, that one was super easy. I do feel that, getting them to help with the process, they're going to be more willing to try something. So like having them help you prepare a meal, they're going to have to try it. They're going to be curious about what it tastes like and the work that they put into it. Bear, like, it's just a piece of meat. So they're not seeing, I actually have a pelt like right here, but they're not seeing that. They're not seeing the cute fuzzy animal. So my kids are all different, right? Like, my Wyatt, my 12-year-old, that kid will out eat pretty much every adult that I know. He will eat anything, and he's always been that way. There's a lot of things that he eats that I'm not a big fan of. Like, I don't like olives, and he could pop a jar and just down it, then it's like, my youngest Sawyer, he's been around the hunting stuff a little bit. He is the picky one, though. He will eat the meat. Vegetables, that's his big thing that we're really working on right now. and then the girls, like Amelia, my oldest, she's I've had her help cooking, and that's one of the biggest things that really got her to try some of the stuff that she was a little more picky about. Was she wants to help in the kitchen, so we're gonna let her help in the kitchen. And next thing you know, she's fallen in love with dishes that she said she didn't like because she never tried it before. So yeah, I mean, it's I just feel like you gotta put it in front of them. You gotta give it a fair shot. Like I said, the bear, I think the first time they had it, I made bear backstraps or tenderloins and venison back to side by side, and obviously the bear we cooked well, but it was like split down the middle in the family, with 3 people preferring the bear over the venison and 3 preferring the venison.
Wow. And I guess I should also ask this question, because I left out one key piece. Like my wife, she won't eat venison. Like I can't get her to commit. Like, did you have to, had your wife, had she grown up eating wild game, or was that also kind of you had to sell her on, like, hey, this is pretty good stuff?
It was, I had to sell her a little bit, like she had probably a similar experience to me. I mean, she grew up in Minnesota, so obviously a state with a big hunting culture. So she had venison when she was growing up. Old boyfriends, this and that, right? Definitely not in her household, but she just didn't like it, and I don't know if that was field care. I don't know what that was, if it was palate or what it was, but I think that the meat itself is it's super good. It's super mild. It's all about the care that you give it, and then the cooking process. I mean, it's when I'm cooking a backstrap, I get a little bit anal retentive about it. Like I am checking temp and monitoring it, and we go hard. We go hard when we make backstraps, and reverse searing and stuff like that, and basting and rosemary garlic butter, and like just going as hard as I can with it. So yeah, she had that. She tried it, and she's like, wow, this is actually really, really good. So yeah, now she's definitely on board, and it's I was fortunate enough to shoot an elk this last year, and she, luckily for me, she likes elk more than anything, so that I guess means that I get to hunt elk more. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about going hard and focusing, I will share with the group, like, I thought I was into nutrition. I'm a dietitian. But having been at an event with you, you're the only person I've ever met, and I know a lot of dietitians who travel with a meat thermometer. Like, this man travels, like you had your own meat thermometer, you had your own seasoning, and you had frozen meat with you on a plane going to a cabin.
Well, when you're bringing black bear, there is the risk of trichinosis,
yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I think it's a lot less than it gets made out to be, but there's the risk. So I wanted to make sure that I had a quality instant read thermometer with me. So yes, I checked a bag just so I could bring an instant read thermometer, because the meat I had frozen in the cooler, and I use that as my carry-on.
Yeah, so I just want to paint the picture for people, like, when you talk about, like, being serious, like, that's how serious he is. I mean, you don't always travel with a meat thermometer, do you? Like, is it always like a...
Well, I actually do have a thermometer in my my toiletries bag, but that's for weight cutting purposes. That's for using in the immersion bath.
Yeah. So I'm glad you brought up weight cutting, because this is one that I think, a lot of dietitians listen to this, and then I actually had some of my students who are here now, who were dietetic students, undergrad, looking to come in the Army, and she actually mentioned this podcast as one she liked, hearing the athlete's perspective. with you. Yeah, can you talk a little bit about that weight cutting process, and then, kind of what you've learned over the years? Maybe, did you make mistakes early on, and then like what you do now that's kind of helped?
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely made every mistake there is to make at this point. It's unfortunately it's been part of my life for a long time. I mean, I started probably like cutting weight when I was like a sophomore in high school, and like when you're young and doing it, it's stupid, right? I should not have been doing it, and then went on to college and was wrestling at a weight class that I shouldn't have been wrestling at. Made a ton of mistakes. Was not mature in what I would put on my plate. So I would eat like absolute crap and then just beat the tar out of myself and be in a dehydrated state for 2.5 days to make weight. Probably took a little time off the old lifespan with that experience. But once it got into fighting, and then it's like, hey, this is part of the game. Like you've got 24 hours, after weigh-ins, and then you get to the UFC, and you're there for a few days in the lead up to the weight cutting fight. So you've got the time to be a professional about it, and you're not dealing with, doing other things, working. There was a time when my brother and I were fighting for a local promotion. We were both fighting in title fights that weekend, and we were doing a renovation with our father, and we're both cutting weight, like just dehydrated, not eating, right? And we had to seal up this house because it was supposed to rain all weekend. So like we're like 36 feet up in the air, sheathing this roof and putting the tarp on. A little loopy. It probably wasn't the best idea, but the job had to get done. We had to get done that stuff for work, and we had to make weight for our fights. So like we were just bouncing both, and it wasn't too smart. I dropped a couple things that day, nail guns, reciprocating saws, but now in the UFC, it's like I've done a lot of the different things, from the sauna to the immersion bath, all sorts of stuff. The diet fight week. I am a fan personally. I need to have a little bit of carbohydrates just to keep the morale up. A little bit of fruit hasn't negatively affected me, but there are a lot of people that go no carb, no fiber during that process. But yeah, it's an unfortunate part of the game. Like I wish it didn't exist. I wish it wasn't there. I wish I was bold enough to go up in weight class to where I wouldn't have to do it, but I'm not, because I'd be a tiny welterweight or 185 pounder. So, so it all comes back to me and my decisions. But the weight cutting process, I always look at it like this is just going to be hell. Like it's going to be super hard, and it doesn't matter. And Martin Rooney, who's one of my coaches, and he's on top of it with all the data. He writes down everything, and he'll go by like what I weighed 3 years ago at that time, before the fight. And in my head, I'm happy that he's taking the notes, and I'm happy he's doing all this stuff. But it's in my head, I'm like, okay, well, it seems like we're on track, but things could go awry. So let's just, let's just lean into this, because it's never fun. And really, I think the reason that I've been successful in it every time, and it seems silly to have to say that, but there are a lot of fighters that miss weight. It is because I am always I'm always anticipating the worst. So yeah, it's not a fun process, but we get it done.
Right, and I mean that's another testament to like to make weight for for 40 fights, or actually more than that, right? Because there was fights you've made weight for that got canceled. But how has it changed since you've aged? Because that's one of the things I love. One of your quotes when everybody was talking about kind of Tony Ferguson and retiring, and he needs to be, what was it? I think it was the Tony Ferguson he was early on, and you're like, no, you're not that guy. He needs to be the one he is at, I don't know his age now, 40 or what have you.
Yeah.
So for you, how has that changed as you've gotten older? Now you're 40-year-old Jim Miller versus 28 or 30-year-old.
My body has changed. My body changed significantly in 2016. I used to walk around at around 190 pounds in between fights with a six pack. But I'd be a $190. I'd be a little bit dumpier, on the bottom end. But I would diet to lose the weight and lean out in the lead up to a fight, and I would come into fight week in the low 170s, and make the weight. And there were some difficult ones in there, and I can control. I can try to control as much of it as I want, right? Like, and the thing of it is like the way I look at it is I only control my effort and my attitude, right? Like that's it. Those are the only things that I have complete control over. I can make sure that I'm putting healthy food in my mouth, but it's like unless I grew, harvested, packed, shipped, stored, sold, cooked, and served that food that I'm getting, I didn't have control over. There's many hands along the way that something bad could have happened, right? Like, I've had some fights where you're dealing with some stomach issues, and I've had some peers that have had some really bad ones, and it's like, who the heck knows what, down the line of where you're eating that salad, like what happened, where that lettuce came from, like because we know that lettuce can give you, E. coli. So like it's tough to control all those things. So I try to just control my attitude about the way things are going, and like I said, my body changed in 16. I walked that a lot heavier, and then went on my first course of doxycycline, which just mangled me on the insides. That's as polite as I'll be about it, and I lost a ton of weight. I fought 4 times that year, so I was in the gym the whole time, training and working out, and not being able to keep up with with how much was going in as how much was coming out. So I ended up losing a bunch of weight. I ended up fighting Thiago Alves at the end of the year, and I was walking around in the low 160s. So I lost a considerable amount of weight in that year, and now if I get big, it's like 175, 176. So I'm not getting very big in between fights. It definitely makes me a small 155er. The weight cuts themselves, they're still uncomfortable. Right. But we track things. We have more experience now, so it's like I've been through it all. I know what it's going to feel like. So I'm just confident that the job's going to get done, really, no matter what any of the little variables, if they're slightly off. The things that make Bruni go a little nuts when I'm a half a pound heavier, I'm really not concerned about it.
Yeah. No, it's good to track all that, and I'm glad you touched on that. One of the other things I wanted to touch on nutritionally with you is your dietary supplements, because a lot of young soldiers they just take whatever. But being a professional athlete, you're drug tested, and another credit to you is you spent all these years, all these fights being drug tested multiple times, and have always passed every drug test. Which again, there's few fighters can't say that. So how do you approach dietary supplements and what you put in your body in terms of supplementation?
I keep it very basic. It's protein, creatine, the omega-3s. I believe because of my stomach issues, I get a B vitamin deficiency sometimes. So like I supplement vitamin B, which seems odd as somebody who eats meat, right? It's typically not something they have to deal with, but B, C, D, nothing super crazy. Like I'm not a pre-workout kind of guy. I'd rather have a cup of coffee. And yeah, like I try to get as much as I can from the foods that I eat. And obviously I know that there's going to be supplementation that's necessary. But you're not going to fix a bad diet by taking, some fancy supplement that, the company spends 75% of their money on advertising and only 25% on, product development. So I keep it as basic as can be.
Nice. Yeah. And I mean, and that's the other important thing is making sure those supplements are from reputable companies, and, but I like that list. So protein, creatine, omega-3 fatty acid, vitamin D, some B's, some C's, and that's about it.
Yeah, melatonin and magnesium. I don't have the list in front of me, Nick. Come on.
No, that's fine.
There's a few more in there.
Yeah.
But like I know you're like, oh, but you should have mentioned. I can't remember them off the top of my head. But
That's fair.
I've been on the collagen too. Yeah, so getting that in there, trying to keep the joints somewhat manageable. So yeah, like I said, it's not. I've never been intrigued by any of the supplements that make these massive claims. So I think that's one of the issues, right? Is that people, athletes, right? They see this claim on a bottle or this claim in an ad, and they're like, oh well, I'm hurting, I'm training like a madman and I'm hurting, so I need to do that, take that stuff, and it'll help me, and then they pop. So I've never fallen victim to that to the advertising.
No, that's good, and appreciate that. And I wasn't quizzing you, so yeah. For those that may not know, can I say I'm your dietitian, or because of the fact that I'm not in the Navy, do you claim me? I don't know. We're trying to figure out which side. But yeah, no, I appreciate that. Jim, I want to be respectful of your time. Really appreciate sharing all your nutrition information with us here today. Looking forward to the fight. So the fight is April 13th in Las Vegas, Nevada. Bobby Green, UFC 300, only fighter to fight 100, 200, 300. Am I missing any other records? I mean, what other records do you have?
There's a few in there. Yeah, they kind of get lost in the weeds, right? Once you get a few, that's like you just need to pick most wins in UFC history. There you go. That's the
most wins in UFC history. So exciting event. Hopefully everybody's listening to this if you're not watching that fight, because again, the matchup is amazing. And it's going to be also, right, you've been fighting in the Apex, so not around the large crowd. And this one, is it the T-Mobile Arena?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. This is
Wow.
a T-Mobile.
So how many people does that sit? Do you know? Is what were you looking at?
Off the top of my head, I don't know. Probably a
40, 60? I don't know.
No, not that big.
Okay.
Not that big.
But still.
Yeah.
More than the Apex.
Way bigger than the Apex.
Way bigger than the Apex. So be sure to tune in and watch that. But Jim, hey, thanks again so much for your time. Hope camp continues to go well.
Thank you, Nick.
All right. Hey, that's all we have for today. Like, listen, subscribe to the Fuel the Fight podcast. And on April 13th, make sure you watch Jim Miller's fight and cheer for Jim A10 Miller. I'm not going to say his other name that might get announced, but he might get announced by another name also if you tune in. Thank you.